You're listening to Masonry Principles, your guide to building better buildings, with hosts Amanda Bedian and Phil Leden. Welcome to Masonry Principles. Today we have Brandon Hartsell. He is out of North Carolina as the project manager for Gates Construction. Thanks for being here, Brandon.
Absolutely.
How's everything going?
So far, so good. We actually are in the 60s today, but we've got a huge winter storm approaching, and we're probably going to get less than a quarter of an inch of ice. So it's going to be big.
We just got hit with 40 inches, well, between 30 and 40 inches of snow. So, I mean, ice is worse than snow, though, I think, in any case.
40 inches of snow, I wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah, well, that's when you send your 14-year-old out to shovel. So, but thank you so much for being here. Phil and I just thought it would be a really good idea. We're all in different states, and you being down in the South, you've got so much masonry construction down there. Sometimes it just doesn't seem real. I see all your posts and the pictures, and these are significant jobs that you're doing. And I just I think it would be good to pick your brain a little bit and see, what is it that the architects, why are they designing with so much masonry? Is it that your codes are different? What is it that we could be bringing up here to the Northeast and Michigan to get our firms to be more masonry friendly?
Well, I think number one, we're very lucky to be located where we are. North Carolina is I'll just say that I believe and feel that it's the number one place for masonry in the world. And a lot of our college campuses, elementary schools, high schools, middle schools, everything down here is masonry. Very rarely will we see stud wall in an elementary school or any school for that matter, um, or anything other than finished masonry on the exterior of the building. So I think the reason that it does seem there is more masonry down here, but I think that's been the standard for so long. Again, we're very lucky to be where we are. We do face our challenges. Right now, I've got a project going on at Appalachian State, which is in some of the highest elevations in North Carolina, and it hasn't gotten out of the 20s in the past week and a half. So, we go from the coast, which is nice all year long almost, to Appalachian State, which is like being up north. And I'm sure I could ask you folks a couple of questions on weather protection.
Cold weather provisions.
Yes, I hate it. I hate cold weather protection. And the sad thing about the project that is going on up at Appalachian State, which is the college in Boone, North Carolina. We were supposed to start it late August. Well, if we would have started in late August, we would be done with the project. Now we're forced to use weather protection, which is fine. But you take a bunch of good old Southern Masons and tell them they're going to work in 20-degree weather and they're going to laugh at you. Things are definitely different down here than they are up where you folks are. And if we got 40 inches of snow down here, we would be shut down for 2 months. But again, we're very lucky. We house, some of the largest masonry contractors in the nation in North Carolina. So the trade is easy to get into. And you folks have seen it on social media in North Carolina. We try to get as many people into the trade as we can. And I'm probably talking too much as it is. So
No, I think it's great. Like, we want those kind of projects up here, and you do have weather on your side. But as far as your recruitment, I feel like just the industry down in North Carolina is something that is admired. And you don't have masonry union down there, right?
correct. That is correct. We don't.
Yeah. So you work pretty strongly with MCAA, and what was the other association you're with?
NCMCA is the North Carolina Masonry Contractors Association, and that's obviously held in North Carolina. And that in itself is an association that is changing quickly. 10 years ago, I had nothing to do with it. And today I feel as though we help set the standard with the rest of the industry. So when I became a part of that, I felt as though it was a good old boys club, and it still continues to be as such every now and then. But we've traveled leaps and bounds from where we were even 5 years ago. And like Amanda said earlier, we now have our own our own man who's in charge of development of the trade, and he goes everywhere. Even in the pandemic, he is becoming very intuitive with the things that he's doing to make folks know about us, and to let kids and everybody else know that the trade is still hiring amid one of the worst things our nation has ever faced, other than a recession.
That's what a conversation I was having with someone is, construction has remained essential, and I think it's a perfect time right now to discuss that with these kids that are going out into the real world, and a lot of them, they were on that path of going to a four-year, not really sure what they were gonna do while they were there, and now you have this opportunity to make money
Yep,
and, like, know that you're gonna be okay, you
correct.
know? You're making a livable wage and just kinda you can hone in on your craft and make it what you wanna be.
Since the pandemic really started, I would say what, early March, maybe a little bit earlier than that. Um, I have missed 0 days of work in that stretch. We've had some close brushes with the virus, and I'll go ahead and step out and say I think that our workforce is probably one of the safest places to be. They are screened daily. There's not a job in North Carolina that you will not go, commercial job that you will not go on, that your temperature is not taken and you're not armbanded before you leave the tent.
Oh,
And
wow.
if you don't meet a certain temperature, you are asked to leave, and you cannot come back until your temperature, number one, has subsided. Number two, you have a note from a doctor saying that you're COVID negative. I think we've got a pretty healthy workforce. Now, on the flip side of that, there are a lot of people who are struggling right now. But that's also a selling tool for our industry. Very few of our guys have been at home at all. So we're very fortunate to be in the business that we're in.
Yeah, and I think it's something we need to talk about more, both like as associations and individual with kids and like whatever, when you have the opportunity to share your story as Brandon and Phil's story as him and mine is mine, like we all ended up in the same place or in the same industry. We're in construction and then we're in the niche market of masonry. And it's just such a pivotal time because these kids, I feel like don't know what their options are.
They don't.
And they need to understand, like, that they do have them and that you can create the lifestyle that you want. Like, we all own our own houses and we go on vacations, and it's this stigma of, like, blue collar construction, and it's so different than what it used to be.
And not only that, you got not all, but obviously some mom and dads say, I don't want my child to be in construction. How dare you even mention that? Construction?
Making 6 figures, some of them.
I don't want my kid to get dirty. I wouldn't, and whatever that may be. But whether you're when you work for Gates, whether you're in the field, whether you're in our office, whether you're out back on our yard, whatever you may be doing, everybody is working, and college degree is not required. And this is where I get on another little soapbox. It isn't required. It was required for me. I wanted it. I'm the first one in my family to have a college degree, and and my son will have one. Whether or not he chooses masonry is up to him.
Right.
I just want him to be happy. But college degrees are not required. They do look good hanging up there on the wall, but at the same time, is it worth the fifty to $100,000 that you paid for it, or still are in the process of paying for it?
Right.
That's my soapbox stance on that.
You and I agree 100%. I go in and I talk to these teachers and guidance counselors about like linear paths, and it's really hard to pitch the industry when you're talking to a group of people that have been on a linear path. Like they knew they were going to go to school for 4 years, they knew they were going to get their master's degree, and then they were going to become guidance counselors or whatever, whatever that path is.
But
So trying to sell it to them as if there are other people out there that aren't so straightforward. It's been a really interesting conversation. Now, do you get involved on the association level or the company level, going to the VOTEC schools or your trade schools recruiting,
we,
or
we do, yeah. We have when we're able to, when we're not in the middle of a pandemic, we have our masonry education day, and we every high school in North Carolina is invited, and we range anywhere from 400 to 700 students coming through that Masonry Education Day at one time, and there's not a kid who leaves there that doesn't have a Gates hat. I can promise you that, and and a card and a number and everything. Um, so yeah, you've got to get out and you've got to talk to the next generation, or there will not be a next generation for this business.
What does that Masonry Day look like? I mean, what do you guys do to promote it?
Oh my God, what happens is obviously months of planning like everything else, but about 7 o'clock, 7:30 in the morning, it is a field trip day for the children. So they come. We have this huge expanse of land out in the western part of Stanley County, which is in North Carolina, obviously. And the kids get there about 7:15, 7:30, and all day long they're put into groups and they go from station to station to station, whether it be heavy equipment, scaffolding, how to lay brick. We have the Junior Bricklayer 500, which they actually will get to see somebody from their school compete while they're there on site that day. Then that is also our Bricklayer 500 qualifier for Vegas. So they get to see everything from this is how you make a block, this is how you lay a block, which is probably two of the dirtiest things you'll ever do, to this is what you could win if you go to Vegas. So we give it to them ground up, I guess is the best way to put it. And again, we have heavy equipment. We show them scaffolding, um, a lot of hands-on stuff, and then obviously we feed them as well.
So are you inviting certain counties? Like, because, I mean, 400 to 700 that's a lot of
Every
kids.
county in North Carolina.
And so is Stanley more centrally located?
No, it's honestly it's kind of central located. It's to the east of Charlotte, North Carolina, or Mecklenburg County. So from the coast, it's a pretty good drive. But one of our biggest block suppliers has a big expanse of land out there and a block plant. And one of the things the kids get to do is tour a block plant during the day.
Gotcha. So you said you do it in small groups. Are you getting sponsors?
Oh yeah, we have. I would say we probably have 150 to 200 sponsors. And when you walk out, it is like, and man, you've been there. It is like walking out onto the Spec Mix yard in Vegas. That's how many people are there, and that's the way we try to make it feel because we want people to see that.
Right, yeah.
If you see the glitz and glamour of the business, you want to get in and work as hard as you can so you can be a part of it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Phil, what are you guys doing out in Michigan for recruiting young Masons?
Not enough. I mean, the biggest complaint we get, I mean, especially as we talk about CMU checkoff, hopefully getting adopted, is workforce development. What we're hearing from our block producers is, I mean, if they make more block, there's just simply not enough people to lay them. So we just haven't been doing enough, and we really need to get back into that kind of high school level, really to educate kids on our industry and help promote ourselves. But I mean, what you're doing down there, Brandon, awesome. I applaud you for that. I think a lot of our states could really benefit from something like that.
And you say that, but our gentleman who actually runs that part, he works for the Masonry Association of North Carolina, and Amanda's probably seen him in Vegas or maybe even at a mid-year event. But his name's Ryan Shaver, and we've actually loaned him out to Texas to get them started. So he is available for consultations.
Oh, no, that's really good to know.
Mackie Bounds and all those folks down there from Texas, they actually flew up here to Charlotte and rode around with Ryan Shaver and Lynn Nash, who's the head of our association, for a few days about a year ago. And they decided then that they needed to follow in our footsteps to help build the trade.
Yeah, and it's like what came first, the chicken or the egg? And I have this conversation all the time, like build more, and this is, I think, a problem in New York, maybe in Michigan. Like we need to design more masonry projects, but then it's like, but we need more people to work them. So
Mhm.
like, which one do we like? Where's that happy medium? You know?
I'm a big fan of if you build it, they will come. You've got to build this trade up, and people ask me why I get excited about it, and I'll be real frank with you. It's been what I have done since I was 12 years old, and my dad made us go to work. And obviously there was a bunch of school in between that and college and all that fun stuff, but it's built in the person, I believe. You got to be passionate about something, and I enjoy it. I mean, it lets me go pretty much anywhere I want to go,
Right.
but it is a hard industry at the same time. There's a lot of responsibility, but we have a good time. I mean, that's what it's all about.
So North Carolina, I did a lot of work down there from a boat racing perspective. You guys are almost exclusively a lightweight state, correct, as far as your blocks? I mean, how does that affect your productivity and things like that?
We are now. There are some where we go. We'll have to go heavyweight in certain situations, but we try to be all lightweight block. We also try to do high lift grout, which speeds our production up. And very rarely do we see a job that deviates from a lightweight specification.
So does that help you sell masonry more? Because I mean, obviously those things are going to affect the bottom line and productivity.
It does. It helps. We just finished a 9-story hotel, and every floor is load bearing CMU. And there's honestly more CMU on the fifth through ninth floors than there are on the first floors. So, and it's one of the oddest things I've ever seen in my life. But when we go higher, obviously the grout's different. We had to use a super lightweight grout, but the block or the CMU didn't change. It was lightweight from ground to roof. But yeah, I mean it's an easier sell. I know you folks have probably seen the mules that hook to
Yeah.
hydraulic scaffold and all that, and we tested a few of them out. But there's really, unless we're laying a unit that is bigger than 8 inches by 16 inches, there really is no reason for us to have something like that. When we raise our scaffold, the guys lay from about a little bit below their knees to right at their chest. So they're really not lifting much at all. And then obviously we move up and go on to the next one.
No, I wish we had 9-story hotels that were structural masonry. Do you have that out in Michigan?
No, absolutely not. I think, I mean, one of the reasons I'm really excited about the checkoff program is, where I live, it's like everything's wood. The only masonry on it is typically the brick veneer. And I know in Milwaukee right now, they're building the tallest wood structure, I believe, in the world, at least in the US. And that's just a stigma we've been fighting tooth and nail, is just kind of the perception that we're more expensive. And I think a lot of that goes to over engineering and maybe marketing or whatever. But yeah, I mean, all of our hotels in Michigan are pretty much exclusively either steel stud or wood stud.
Hmm.
So what I'm hearing is we've got to recruit some North Carolina architects and bring them to the North
Yeah.
Country.
On the flip side of that, we deal with northern architects who have somehow or another got their hands on a building down here. And some of the things that we fight on submittals would blow your minds. We have to remind them that we're not building a building where it's going to be minus 20 at any point in time, probably, unless the world's freezing over. But we feel sometimes we feel the northern's pain, I guess is the way to put it. But nothing makes me more sick to my stomach than to see a wood structure going up, knowing that I've got to put brick veneer on it.
Right.
And it really, really bugs me to see a 4 or 5 story wood frame structure that, say for instance, now we're building a residence hall, 5 stories. There's going to be thousands of folks living in it, and it's wood framed.
Yeah.
How safe does that even sound to anybody who has a brain?
It's like a matchbox. That's what I go around my town, and it's like you could literally throw a cigarette on it and it'd probably catch on fire, but who are we?
I agree. I agree. Well, let me ask you this: Do you folks see much thin brick?
We do. We still promote a lot of cavity wall construction. And so a lot of especially our schools are still cavity wall. So we see a lot of brick there, but we do see thin brick kind of on the commercial side a little bit. But yeah, as far as kind of like our bread and butter, like at schools, it seems like cavity wall is still kind of the Cadillac. And honestly, we're still promoting single white masonry up here. In recent years, we've really struggled to educate architects about how single withe masonry can meet the energy code, because we have different issues to deal with up here in your climate zone in North Carolina. You don't necessarily have to deal with, but we're still promoting single withe masonry as a really great product, especially for like warehouse construction, anything that needs to be durable like that. We're really trying to go with that.
Yeah, and we, anytime we have a school, it's usually cavity construction. One of the things that we, and you may have a differing opinion, which would be awesome, but um, spray foam. Do you folks deal with that on the exterior of, say, a CMU face before you brick veneer it?
A lot of what we see is the rigid board. Yeah, it's usually in those 16-inch strips, so that way they can put the brick tie in it, and then they'll use that foam, kind of in the bed and head joints, which they told us that they have tested that as a vapor barrier, which is interesting to me because it is an air and a moisture and a vapor barrier now. But most of what we see is that rigid foam when we're looking in a cavity.
So down here, the newest biggest thing is what they call spray foam, which when we would show up to put the brick on the building, everything's in place. So your anchors, your flashings, turn bars, everything is in place, and then it is spray foams. It looks like something you would do in an attic, and that is your air barrier, vapor barrier, everything, and your rigid insulation all in one. It is a nightmare for a masonry company. There's so much additional. When we install that rigid board, we're in charge. We're pushing the building. We're pushing the schedule. When we do spray foam, we're waiting on so many other trades to get their stuff done that it hinders our work. It really does. I didn't know if you had any experience with that.
Yeah, where we do see spray foam is in single withe masonry construction, because typically we're using like a vermiculite or a perlite or a loose foam insulation in any of our ungrouted cores. But recently we have seen different types of spray foam being used in that application, both closed cell and open cell. And so we have seen it there. But I think and when we're looking in a cavity, it's still pretty much rigid board.
Oh man, I wish that was like that down here.
Well, I mean, I feel like you guys got some really good things going on, and we're just excited that you could come up and be a part of our podcast and just share your stories, and whether it's on the recruiting side or the building side, and just your personal story of how you got involved with masonry and wrapping things up. When you're talking masonry to somebody that doesn't know much about it, whether architect, engineer, just a kid that's graduating high school, what's one thing you could share with them that you wish they knew?
I think one of the most important things that I can portray is when you're in this business and you do it right and you take pride in what you do, you will never want for a job. As long as you do it correctly, you'll be fine. If somebody is on the fence about whether or not to use masonry in their projects, I will usually send them to the University of North Carolina at Charlotte College campus, which is, we call that Gates Construction Company's trophy case because we built so many buildings out there. That's our 90% of the posts that you see online. It's a building from that campus. And if you're not sold on the fact you should use masonry on your building, go out there and look at some of those.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being a part of this. And I hope that we can continue the conversation maybe in another episode when we're maybe in 2021 when things come back to some sort of normal. One more question. When do you host your education day?
It's usually the second week of October, and that is also when North Carolina holds its Spec Mix 500 qualifier event. So we do them in conjunction, and it really it helps because more people can see it. Don't worry, when it comes out, I'll send you more information than you want about it.
Well, I can't wait. I'm going to have to steal your business development guy and see what we can do up here. Well, thank you so much. And thanks for listening to Masonry Principles. If you like this episode, you can find us on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and Spotify. Be sure to share it with your peers and friends. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Masonry Principles. To continue the conversation, be sure to reach out to us by visiting masonryprinciples.com.